Today on Independent Wrestling Profiles, we're talking with the Old Soul Hundo P. When did you first get introduced to wrestling from like a fan level?
So I'm actually the youngest of five brothers. So they grew up in the Attitude Era, Golden Era. My oldest brother grew up in the Golden Era, and he was probably the biggest wrestling fan. And then my other brothers followed. However, they grew out of watching wrestling, but I ended up picking up where they left off. So I ended up basically growing up in the Attitude Era, just right before the Ruthless Aggression era. So that was kind of where that fuel started igniting within me. And then by the time I was about 6 or 7, I discovered TNA on ESPN Classic, and from there I was hooked. I watched the first Ultimate X match, and I was like, "Dang, this is different." And that was kind of what sparked me to want to just tune in a little more. And there was so much more variety as well. So it wasn't just your typical Raw and SmackDown. Now it's like there's Raw, SmackDown, and TNA. So that was kind of the introduction for me. And then also just growing up with the action figures, the video games, the whole shebang that fuels all of us as like the wrestling fan in us, you know?
So it started as a familiar thing. Your brothers were fans and they fell out of it, but were they with you for like kind of the beginning parts of it and they could share action figures, video games, maybe putting moves on you like the
Yeah.
basement or something like that?
Yeah, so I was actually the guinea pig for all of the moves that they would try. So I was the one that was being put in the walls of Jericho. I learned how to take the figure four at a very young age. So it was very much I was getting my butt kicked for quite some time, but as time passed on, they knew that I started to understand.
So you're a fan, young age, just kind of getting into it. What aspects of wrestling or what performers were kind of the main draws that really got you invested in it more than just like kind of passively watching it with your brothers?
So before I discovered TNA, a lot of it was very much Hardys, Dudleys, Edge and Christian. That whole mid card era of the Attitude Era was just very much like the work rate for me that I enjoyed. Plus the storytelling of the main event scene at that time. And then once I discovered TNA's work rate, I was like, oh wow, this is like a lot faster paced. There's a lot more moves being implemented. And that was one of those things that kind of opened more to me as a fan and just as a watcher to be able to understand that there's honestly levels to this industry when it comes to just being in the ring. So that's kind of a big thing right there.
Did TNA ever make you want to step foot into a six-sided ring?
Yeah, actually, it's crazy you mentioned that because being in a six-sided ring is a future goal of mine. I'd love to step into a six-sided ring, whether it be in Mexico, whether TNA decides to bring it back for one time, or just something along the lines of that. I'd love to get into the ring.
Going back to when you're a fan here, did you have a chance at that time or even like shortly after to experience a live event, to go see, a performance, feel the crowd, just actually get to see this in person rather than separated from a television screen?
So at the prime of my youth, no, actually. So my mom was always working. My brothers were always going off to school. They played basketball, did all the extracurricular stuff. So I was always home, either playing with my figures, watching wrestling, just trying to keep up with whatever's going on, trying to find wrestling wherever I can to just stay invested and keep myself out of trouble. It wasn't until I believe Survivor Series 2016, which was held in Toronto. I believe it was the Raw versus SmackDown 5-on-5. And that was when I was able to first experience that live wrestling crowd from a WWE perspective. And it was actually a year ago, a year ago where I attended my first live independent professional wrestling event.
Oh, only a year ago.
Yeah.
So obviously older age when you're checking that out. Did it
Mhm.
almost immediately kind of hit you the differences between the two and maybe, how much more interactable independent show is versus like kind of the big stuff?
Kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, there's definitely levels to like how not just like production standpoint, but just engagement would be. I would definitely say the biggest difference that I noticed is that there's a lot more personality being displayed on the independent scene from a person to person interaction because it's definitely more of an intimate settings. Whereas you're, say, for example, at the Rogers Center, where it's packed, it's a packed event. There's a lot of people there. It's harder to kind of have that person to person connection when there's so many people around.
Yeah, it's a lot more static noise as opposed to individualized. And you can't really hear the wrestlers in the ring kind of interacting with the fans on a bit more of a personal level.
Yeah.
Did that have a bit of an impact on you when you kind of were starting to train and get into it? Like, oh, you know what? There's actually an element to this that I maybe wasn't anticipating, but now I have to focus on.
Yeah, actually, that's actually something I'm currently working on now in ring. Is just understanding how to just work with your crowd and work with who you're engaging with and the demographic that you have within your audience. And I feel like that's a really big important thing as a professional wrestler because it's like there are like the people that pay to come see and that invest into the show that they're watching, they need us to be able to provide for them. So it's our job to have to engage with them, make them feel welcome, make them feel at home whenever they're there. Because at the end of the day, like that is their escape from reality, and it's all of our escapes from reality of some sort. You know what I mean? So I feel like just being able to build that rapport, that connection, whether it be like a split second or if it's just a segment where you can just kind of interact with them in a way where you can get them to feel for you or feel for the scenario that you're in. I feel like that goes a really long way.
So take me back a little bit. Okay, you're a fan, you're kind of going through life and you're getting older. What happens where you actually decide to make that step? Okay, I'm gonna go from fan to performer.
So the thought of going from fan to performer started probably when I was about 16. I was actually searching around to see if there's any professional wrestling schools at the time. At first, I found out about Superkick, but at the time I wasn't able to afford it. So I put it on the back burner for quite some time. And then it was only until I believe last year where I coincidentally enough, so I was video game shopping and I was looking for a Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 and on the Wii. And it was one of those things where right place, right time. As I was about to check out and purchase the game, on the side there was a pamphlet that had a school in my local area, which is New Beginnings Pro Training. And from there, I took a pamphlet and I was like super giddy, super excited that the inner child in me was like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. And then from there, I felt like that was my go signal, my universal go signal to tell me like, okay, now is the time to do it. If there's any other time to do it, then why not now? And don't hesitate on it. So it was one of those things that I pounced on as soon as I found it.
Okay, well, did you get the video game?
Yeah, I did. I did.
Okay, so I asked Jackson Roy from Dynasty the same question, and I'm going to ask you, hoping you're a big enough Dragon Ball fan to answer this.
Ooh,
Okay.
ooh. Okay, big enough Dragon Ball fan. I gotta plug you in. Yeah. So I got the Go Tanks tattoo, and then I also got a little bit of a
A
Nike
Nike.
Cross Dragon Ball Z. Um,
The basketball never goes away. Trust me.
Never.
I'm advanced in years, and I still love it. And I'm that guy who tells high school basketball stories still.
Mm.
Who is the best character in Dragon Ball Z, and why is it Vegeta?
My dog, brother knows ball. Okay, reason why I think Vegeta is probably one of the best characters is because he got all of like everything that he worked towards, he earned that on his own. He got it out the mud. He really and truly put his heart, his soul, his pride in what it is that he did, and he was one of those characters that stood on business.
Okay. So the conversation that we had with me, Jackson and myself is why Krillin also deserves respect
Most definitely.
for being the only human that was able to actually stand up to all this stuff with no alien genetics, no crazy background, no superpowers, just like a regular dude whose destructo disc could cut Cell, and he's just a human.
Yeah, exactly. Krillin was one of those guys that he was a literal ride or die. and he rode till the wheels fell off every time. Through the battle with Nappa, through the battle with Frieza, even through the stuff with Boo too. He was just always there and present to the point where like I have always respected Krillin as a character.
Just a bit of a weakness for androids, I guess.
I mean, I don't know. I see why he's rocking with Android 18.
So you're heading into new beginnings then. Do you remember or recall like kind of your feelings, your thoughts, kind of those first couple days heading in there? Maybe what you weren't expecting, maybe some of the things you were most excited for. Like, really, what's going through your head when you're actually taking this first step to make this dream a reality?
Good question. The first thing was how hard are the bumps? That was the first question that I had in mind. Because I remember taking self-defense in high school, and they taught us just like how to take laying down bumps just for like safety precautions. So I always mentally thought that it was similar to that. But as soon as I stepped foot into the ring on my first day of training and took that first bump, it was very much a, well, this is a new world. So,
You took self-defense in high school. Were you in any other way kind of like athletic or, physically involved in any sort of sports or anything prior to getting into wrestling?
yeah, so prior to actually stepping foot into the ring, I was actually playing basketball for all 4 years of my high school. I wasn't on the team, but I was actively just working towards getting to that spot. And it was only until grade 12 where I made the basketball team and I was able to kind of display my talents in some way, shape, or form. And once I stepped foot out of high school, basketball never really left. It's kind of always been there, and it's always something I was actively just working at, training, just working my physical body from an athletic standpoint, gearing towards just basketball. So wrestling wasn't really like strength training and yeah, strength training wasn't really the priority. It was more so just the agility training, trying to increase my vertical, getting better at shooting a better jump shot. Just everything like in the world of basketball was kind of the realm that I was in. So a lot of my workout regimen was geared towards just speed, explosiveness, and just anything along the lines that can help me be a more polished basketball player.
Okay.
So I feel like that was kind of where things kind of lied.
Sounds like some of those interchangeable skills would have parlayed themselves well to becoming more of like a high flyer when it comes to wrestling. And not that you can't pick up the technical side of it, obviously, but obviously that's going to help you with the more showmanship stuff. And is that kind of what you've kind of always wanted to carry with you as you've made that transition? That's kind of the identity that you've wanted to kind of carve out for yourself?
As a pure high flyer, no. I would love to display more of the technical sides of things. However, I know that based on my physical capabilities and my abilities, I know that having high flying abilities is important, but I know that that's not the main core piece that surrounds us as professional wrestlers.
What are the biggest challenges that you're finding as you're working your way through training? Are there any elements that, not that you can't get, but maybe you need to put a little bit more work into that were maybe a little bit more challenging that you had anticipated from just viewing it from the outside in?
For sure, I would definitely say pacing. I noticed that there's times where I have a tendency of moving a little too fast. And I think that stems from the constant flow of playing basketball and everything being so fast paced and nonstop that when you translate it to wrestling, there's so many points in time where you're stopping and you're taking a breath or you're grabbing a bit of air or just really taking time to let things breathe, which was something I never understood as like the key component until I actually got into the ring and started like just exerting the physical energy to go through a match start to finish.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to realize that those rest moments aren't necessarily for you. They're for the audience to take in what's going on. They're for the audience to kind of get a break in that pacing in order to keep moving forward, and that's where the character work comes in. So take me through. You're doing your training,
Mhm.
you're making your improvements. So how did you actually get to the point where you felt comfortable enough or you had done enough training that you would actually get like a first match going under your belt?
For me, I'd like to think it was the dedication and willingness to really and truly want it. So every time I step foot in the ring, the mentality of, I think the basketball mentality kicked in where it's just like practice everything at game speed. That way, when you are in a game, a lot of those things are pretty much second nature for you.
So there was no issue with confidence. How did you feel when you were actually told, okay, you're on this card?
Oh, to be honest with you, I was pretty nervous. At first, I didn't think I was ready, more so from like the self-conscious questioning my abilities and capabilities at that level. And it ultimately took a bit of talking myself out of and having a couple of conversations outwards before I even like step foot in the ring to be able to understand that maybe I do have this under control. Maybe I do have a sense of understanding to be able to execute at the level that I'm at.
Okay, so it's game day. You break through the curtain. That first match is going to take place. How does the mood change on your way to the ring when you're heading down there, when you're seeing your opponent, when you're hearing the crowd? Does the mentality switch over?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the cobwebs shake off prior or after the music hits and as soon as I walk through the curtain. It's one of those things that at first I was very underconfident within myself because more of kind of going back to the self-conscious aspect of if I'm going to perform well or if I'm going to the bed or just kind of um, make myself look a type of way. But then as time went on, I started to understand that my earlier years are definitely going to be a learning experience. And I'm still only a year into just training and actively working on shows. So this is still a learning process in its own. But I feel like as show by shows go, it makes it a lot more easier.
So how did the first match go?
The first match that I had went well. I feel like there were things that I didn't understand at first, but then looking back at the clips now with the experience that I have, I understood exactly what it is that I needed to work on at that point in time. I felt like I went in there with a sense of confidence to display that I am able to kind of do what it is that we do today and try to make something out of it. And my biggest thing was very much just have fun at the end of the day. Really, really much have fun because the more scared you are, the more you feel like the more hopeless you feel, the harder it becomes on you.
And do you have a good source of motivation or a sounding board? Do you get feedback from anybody in particular when you finish your matches that kind of maybe is a little bit more valuable to you that you can take to your next ones?
I always try to value asking who I work with and anybody that's on the card throughout the night for any piece of tidbit and advice, things I can work on, things I can apply or take away, just to get a second insight. Because at the end of the day, in an industry where you can't necessarily learn everything, it's highly recommended for you to learn as much as you possibly can, no matter how far you are in, no matter who's there, where, like, because there's always something you can learn from. So I try to just sit and be a sponge whenever anybody's around. Anybody that has more experience than I do, I try to gravitate towards and really try to understand where they're coming from and what the psychology behind the why as to what they're telling me to be able to apply it in my experience. Because everybody's experience is different when it comes to being in that ring.
So, young career so far, you're still kind of working through your first year, maybe heading into the second year. Have you had a match so far that has been like your favorite so far for any particular reason?
Yes. So there was a match that I had this past February. Yes, this past February, and it was against John Tavius. And I feel like he was able to really and truly elevate not only myself as a performer, but me just as a person and as just a overall mind in professional wrestling. Very much taught me how to really make everything mean something.
It's very early and you probably still have a lot that you want to accomplish. I mean, we already mentioned the six-sided ring, but is there anything that's maybe a little bit more of an immediate goal, like somebody that you would like to compete with, and maybe something that's a little bit more of a long-term goal where you would like to see your career go next?
For an immediate goal, there's nobody specific that I would love to face. There's such a wide talent pool in Ontario right now that it's like I genuinely want to wrestle everybody and learn as much as I can. It's the eagerness in me. It's like whenever I'm on social media scrolling through and just seeing like what the scene's got going on, it's just there's so much extraordinary talent, and I'm just like, dang, I gotta get in. I gotta mix it up with them. Like, for me, one person I would definitely say is Jax Williams for sure.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Very amazing. We had I There was supposed to be a show back in April where we were supposed to have a triple threat match that didn't go through. I guess that was definitely more of a redirection so that we can kind of like cross paths somewhere later on in the future in a singles match. Yeah, I feel like in terms of a long-term goal, I definitely would love to put on for the Black community in a way where I can showcase the talent pool that we have in Canada. Not only just myself, but just everybody that is of color and are working towards something within our industry. I really want to be able to put them on display as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's not stick to reality here. Who's the dream opponent? You don't have to worry about making it make sense. But who would you absolutely just love to get in the ring with, regardless of how it would ever happen?
To be honest, it would have to be Prime AJ Styles.
Okay.
Prime AJ Styles or Prime Chris Sabin.
Oh, okay. I mean, I still think both of them could go even today, and you would
Yeah.
still have something amazing to show for it.
I agree with you 100%. I feel like the time that I discovered those two was where I was just like, yeah, I wanna be like that. And that is the style that I've wanted to work for such a long period of time. It's almost that high flying junior heavyweight X division style, but very physical at the same time.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Let's step out of the ring for a minute. So you have some time to yourself, you have a day off. What kind of hobbies or pastimes do you have to maybe escape wrestling for yourself from time to time?
Crazy you mentioned that. Wrestling never actually the wrestling never leaves my mind. It's one
I
of
know
those.
it's a tough question for everybody I ask, but I mean, you have to at some point do something different, right?
Oh, a lot of the times I actually spend my time on video games.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a very big gamer as a whole. Like if I'm not in the ring, if I'm not at work or training, I'm you're probably gonna find me at my desk either on the PS5 playing some 2K or playing just getting a little retro action. Play a lot of Def Jam. Def Jam Fight for New York is definitely one of those things that hold a candle in my heart.
Underrated game. Not too many people realize that they took the framework of No Mercy, which is often cited as like the best wrestling game ever,
Yeah,
and built it into another game. Like they're like, I can't find that combat system again. It's like you can. It's
yeah,
just in a game you wouldn't expect.
I hear you on that. I agree with you. I feel like AEW Fight Forever took a chance at trying to see if they can make it work. Definitely work that needs to be improved on, but it was going back to the No Mercy structure of it all. I feel like No Mercy is one of the greatest fundamental wrestling games of all time
Mhm.
that can never be replicated.
No.
I don't think it's one of those games that can be replicated.
Yeah, but I mean, AEW Fight Forever, respect for using the combat system. They just needed to do everything else around it. I
Yeah.
actually had a chance to review that one on my other channel back in the day. Um, Recommend to me your top three video games.
Oh, you
Yeah,
got
I
me
know, it's a tough
on.
one.
Oh, okay. This is a smooth one. All right. For in no particular order,
No particular order.
I would have to say Mario Kart Double Dash.
Oh, that's a good one.
Very slept on. Very, very much slept on.
Yeah, I'm tired of hearing Mario Kart 64, okay? It's a good
No,
game, but
no,
like, think of something outside the box.
come on. Flop out, have your partner throw the eggs. Come on. Um, that's a good question. I would have to say WWF No Mercy.
Okay.
Um, and then dang, last one's kind of hard. I'd probably have to say Call of Duty Black Ops 2.
Ooh, Black Ops 2 specifically.
Specifically Black Ops 2.
Is it because of the story in that one, or is it because of the mechanics?
I think the overall mechanics of that game, they took everything that they were polishing from the original Black Ops and elevated just a little bit to where everything that we had in that game was really like all we needed. Like no matter what, you were able to swap through different weapons and have fun and not have to worry about like skill-based matchmaking and just all extra the extra things that are added in today's day and age of gaming and first person shooters that I don't know, there was a level of fun that was there, especially the zombies. The zombies were just I the countless amounts of hours that I put in that game. It's one of those things that hold a place in my heart.
That's awesome. So getting back into wrestling, if you were to have a chance to go back and talk to, I guess not that much of a younger version of yourself, but a version of yourself prior to getting into wrestling, is there any piece of advice that you would give yourself that maybe even could translate to somebody who's just training right now?
Be open and receptive to everything because you never know what it is that or what piece of game that might be spit towards you that you can take and apply to. And it doesn't matter like from what aspects of life it is. It could be you walking on the street, just having a regular human experience and regular human experience bumping into somebody and just having a certain conversation that can inspire you to want to do more or just want to have a little bit more pep in your step. I would definitely say just keep your head held high for sure. Don't listen to the outside noise. Don't follow your dream. Follow the footsteps of your dream, I would say.
That's amazing. And then the last question I just want to ask you is, do you have any sort of memorable interaction with another wrestler, with a fan that you've kind of always carried with you, whether it was bumping into a superstar or getting a piece of advice backstage from someone that you respected, or even just a compliment from a fan that maybe you weren't expecting to get?
One thing that really holds a lot of value to me is there was a Destiny show that I actually went to go help out at. All of the wrestlers were out, all of the wrestlers were walking in around the call time, just kind of getting ready, saying their hellos. And there was a point in time where I bumped into Trent Seven.
Okay.
He took time out of the busy day that he had to just stop and have a conversation. And we were literally just shooting conversation for about 5 minutes, just talking about like music and Drake and Tupac. And it was just one of those things that I was like, oh, this is a very like genuine moment. And it shows that we're all human and we're all the same in a way. It's like, it doesn't matter what your status is. He showed me that like, no matter where you are, like you can take that time to just have a conversation with anybody, no matter like what your stature is or like where you are on the card. It was a very positively humbling moment for me that I'll always hold close to my heart as well.
It's almost like grounding. You realize that these people that we put on a pedestal, at the end of the day, they are still people, just like
Yeah,
us. And
yeah,
that, I'm sure Trent, as the like fantastic professional he is, remembers that at some point he was in that position and he kind
mhm,
of carry that forward to the next generation. And,
right.
ideally one day you can carry that forward to another young performer who
Mhm.
maybe doesn't realize that there's somebody to reach out to. So that's absolutely amazing. And I mean, like awesome that he did that because he is a class act for sure.
Most definitely, very professional at what he does, and it's something that I admire, and I'd love to just apply to my work style and how I carry myself in the locker room and wherever I go and handle myself professionally.
So I want to say thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time. Before we sign out, can you just let people know where they can find you online, where they can drop you a follow, and once again, who you are?
I am Hundo P. I am the old soul, also the newest kid on the block in the Ontario scene, if you will. You can find me on all platforms at Hundo P with two N's, Hundo underscore P on literally all platforms, TikTok, Instagram, uh, Twitter, or X, if you will. And yeah, I'm very easily accessible. You can definitely find me there. I am going to start putting my matches up on my YouTube page as well as my portfolio starts to expand. So definitely for the ones that are tuning in right now, be on the lookout for that.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me very much. It was a pleasure having this conversation, just chopping it up. I loved it.
Thank you for tuning in to Independent Wrestling Profiles. Please help out the show if you can with a like, subscription, or review. We'll see you next time.